Happy Hump Day, sports fans, and welcome back to FNN Sports Take with me, Kasey Hudson. It is amazing to catch up with you guys. We only have a few quick updates, but with everything that's been going on in the world right now, I think at this point that's kind of good news. So, of course, we're going to kick it off with some NFL updates. Brady posted yesterday on social media that he took it to QB school at a Tampa Bay high school. Well, it's exciting to see these guys getting together because it still gives us hope that there's going to be a 2020 NFL season. But, of course, with that post on social media came a lot of heat. You saw that it was him, Blaine Gabbert, and Ryan Griffin out there getting some quality QB time, but he caught a lot of heat because NFLPA released a statement last week on Friday asking players to no longer do private workouts amongst one another. They're asking that they actually isolate, social distance, and just work out with themselves until they get all of the protocols and procedures in place to make sure that they can safely return for a 2020 NFL season. Obviously, he caught extra attention to the fact that he had to work out with his QBs yesterday because not only did that announcement come out on Friday recommending or actually asking these guys to no longer work out together, but then it was also because one of the assistant coaches for the Tampa Bay Bucks and two Tampa Bay players tested positive for COVID-19. So they obviously didn't release names. We know that at this point, everyone's kind of trying to protect their privacy when it comes to COVID-19. A lot more people are coming out with confirmed cases, which is unfortunate, but I understand no names being released at this point. If you guys heard, as soon as the two players came out from the Bucks, everybody was wondering, is it Tom Brady? Because it was like Buccaneers players get tested positive for COVID, and then it was no longer work out together, keep it private, keep it to yourself. So everyone was like, hey, one of the main people hosting workouts was Tom Brady. Does he have it? Obviously, if he's back out there with a couple of the guys yesterday, I'm guessing he's not one of the guys that tested positive for it, which is good news. You don't want your QB1 down or battling something like this because, like we said, it attacks everybody differently. Now, Brian McCarthy told ESPN that everyone associated with the NFL should follow the recommendations and guidelines of state and local authorities, medical experts, including the NFLPA. The league is working with the NFLPA to conclude the remaining protocols and finalize arrangements for safe opening of training camps next month. We are 1 month away from training camp, and these guys are really still kind of trying to narrow down the best way to not only have the athletes in the building, but the staff in the building and personnel who's going to help hit this off so that we can have a real 2020 NFL season minus probably the fans. Now, Coach Arians took to a video on social media as well and all over Bucks website and Bucks pages, to let everyone know during these difficult times, it is important that we all show we care about our community. Arians said you could spread coronavirus without even knowing it. So please wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance from one another, stay strong, go Bucks. Now, this is an important message, as simple as it was, because the big word, as we've come back to over and over again, is asymptomatic. Some of these players are asymptomatic, and they don't even realize that they are being carriers or spreading COVID-19. Asymptomatic is popping up a lot more if you guys have been paying attention to the many cases that have popped up within the last 14 days. So at that point, guys, it's not just about you. If you feel healthy, if you feel safe, if you feel secure, you could be a carrier without even knowing. So it's these little extra steps, these little protocols and procedures that can help save or, maintain the spread and start reducing it again. So wearing a mask, it sucks. It feels like you're literally being chloroformed, in my personal opinion. Wearing gloves feels odd. Hand sanitizing, it's not that big of a deal. Washing your hands should have been something that we were doing since we were kids if your parents taught you to wash your hands all the time, which my parents did. So hopefully people can get a little bit more on board and there's not so much pushback because it's like we want the world to come back to us. We want to find that normality, but we don't want to do what it takes to get there. Come on. Somebody's got to give a little. Each one of us has to do our part. Now, since Florida is reopening, younger people are making up the significant number of new infections. The average age of infections now is at 37 in Hillsborough County alone, which is here in Tampa Bay. So guys, wear your mask, wash your hands. It's not too hard. To add to the list of COVID-19, we have a San Francisco player who didn't want his name released, who was working out in Nashville, Tennessee, alongside Dallas Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott, who we know took to social media to announce his COVID-19 positive test. Denver Broncos defensive back Kareem Jackson is also amongst those names that have been recently released. So we hope that these guys have a speedy recovery. We hope that they stay safe and that, they report negative here shortly. Now, transitioning out of some COVID-19 talk, obviously there's been a lot of that going on lately. Mitchell Trubisky, this conversation has kicked up a lot in the past 4 to 6 months, especially when Nick Foles signed with the Bears. But what does that say about Mitchell Trubisky's future with the Bears? Does that mean that he's on his way out the door, even though he was supposed to be the face of this franchise? Does this mean that he's going to have somebody who can actually rely on, in particular games, or somebody to even learn from? Mitchell Trubisky may have not had the most consistent performance, but we also have to put in play that in order to be a well-oiled and functioning machine, you have to have all parts working at a consistent pace. He didn't always have the best weapons on his side. He didn't always have the best protection. 4 years ago, he's been in the league now. When he first got in there, the only thing the Bears really had going for them was a couple prime defensive prospects on their team. They were really in the real rebuilding phase of their offense. So if you just take a step back for a minute, I don't think this really speaks to what he can and cannot offer, because he hasn't been given the entire platform to perform on, in my opinion. Last year, he threw for a little over 3,100 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. And then 2018, obviously, he kind of outshined his previous season because he threw for a little over 3,200 passing yards and 24 TDs. But if we compare that to Nick Foles' stats, was obviously at the Jaguars, and prior to that, he was at the Eagles. When he was at the Jaguars, and obviously he came in a little later in the season, he only threw for 736 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, over at the Eagles, he gets so much credit, not only for the timing in which he came in, a clutch quarterback, but to play in the Super Bowl. But looking at his stats, he only threw for a little over 1,400 passing yards and 7 touchdowns. So, in your opinion, guys, do you go with Nick Foles? Do you just hand the team over to him? Or do you let him be somebody who can bounce off of Mitchell Trubisky, or they bounce off of one another, teach each other some things, and they move forward, but Trubisky continue to be the face of the Bears franchise? I would love to hear you guys' feedback on that. Shoot us a comment, shoot us a DM so we can break that down a little bit more on Friday night. Now, for other contract conversation, Jets, we discussed the fact that Jamal Adams is not a happy safety up there in New York. He is still trying to head to Dallas, of all places. Now, there's about 6 other teams that are expressing interest if the trade does open up. Most people are advising, look, he hasn't been happy since he's got there. There hasn't been confirmation or details on why, but at this point, just get rid of the guy. Let him go somewhere else. I still don't think Dallas is it. They just blew a chunk of money to keep Dak Prescott as their QB1. And again, unless he's going to take a pay cut, which sources haven't confirmed either, I don't see Dallas happening in Jamal Adams' future. He's a top 10 safety, so unless he's going to take a pay cut, he's got to go somewhere else. And I think Baltimore might actually end up creeping up higher on that list. For some good news with football, Miami Dolphins partner up with Tribeca Drive-In Theater so that they just have a way to bring the community together, get away from the distraction of COVID-19 and everything else taking place in this world. And I think that's a beautiful thing to have. Hard Rock Stadium is amazing. Super Bowl was just there in February, and the atmosphere there is just beautiful. I mean, I love how they were able to have the whole center open. It was just a whole different feel out there. So that's a really good light note for the Miami Dolphins and Tribeca Drive-In Theater. Stick with us as we head to a quick commercial break, and we come back and break down some NBA.
All this time we fought side by side. We trained together. We lost together. And now, you're the only one standing in my way. It's been a while, old friend.
All right, guys, welcome back. So for some NBA breakdown, we know that today was a big day because it was the official deadline for players to decide whether they were in or out and joining the bubble in Orlando, Florida. Aside from them not wanting to be a distraction with all the racial justice that's taking place in the nation, as well as COVID-19 being a scare, the biggest scare was the fact that COVID-19 cases obviously spiked in Florida, where they're supposed to be safely resuming their season. Now, as players decided whether or not they were going to join the bubble, today being the deadline, they didn't really go as deep to say whether it was COVID-19, not having a distracting season from what's taking place in the nation, so on and so forth. The biggest information we've gotten is that some guys didn't want to tax out their body because they're either coming off of injury recovery or they just don't think it's worth it. We know that Kyrie Irving was one to speak out to the fact that he thinks it would be a distraction to resume a season during everything that's taking place. And other players that came out just said, look, I don't like the idea of being away from my friends, my family, my loved ones for that long, and COVID-19 is now running rampant in Florida, so how about not? Players that have been confirmed thus far that will not be joining Orlando, Florida tourney is Avery Bradley, DeMarcus Cousins. His statement was more so the fact that he's been in a toss-up free agency trying to figure out where his contract is heading and where he will actually end up really establishing his career. So at this point, he just thought it was better to opt out, get some time to figure out what his NBA career is going to look like. We know that Kevin Durant was one to say no thank you, but also he just came off of an torn Achilles recovery, and then Trevor Azaria. For NHL news, there's a little bit of a lighter note there, thank you. Tampa Bay Lighting reopened their facilities after shutting down for 5 whole days to re-sanitize everything after 3 players tested positive for COVID-19 amongst other staff members. Now, what was recently released earlier today is that amongst these people that tested positive for COVID-19, most of them were actually asymptomatic. There's that fun word again. Aside from that, others had a low-grade fever, so they asked them all to self-isolate, but it made them concerned to the fact that the asymptomatic could have spread a little bit further, so that's why they chose to shut down the facility rather than keep things going and make sure that they sanitize everything. They actually recommended that most people self-isolate during this time that the facility was shut down just to make sure, because they're trying to find a way to monitor or reel in or keep track of this asymptomatic situation. Now, the next part of phase 2 for the NHL, it started off with 6 players being able to hit the ice and do some small training group workouts together. Now they can up that from 6 players to 12 players, but only for on-ice sessions. So it looks like they're still progressing forward to their playoffs. And another bright note in progression to having a playoff season is that they narrowed it down to 6 hub cities. Las Vegas is a considered favorite city to be chosen for the United States, Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Obviously, to keep the whole feel of the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference, Las Vegas is on the West Coast. They're probably going to lean more towards having an East Coast city. The closest one to that is Toronto, and Canada is favored to have a hub city as well. It just makes the most sense. That is the home of hockey. Not only that, but the Prime Minister has been heavily involved in making sure that Canada is safe, secure. No COVID-19 is going to be coming, at spiked levels into Canada. They have very, very effective safety protocols and procedures in play up there, and they want to be one of the cities considered to host playoffs. So I think it should lean towards Toronto. That would maintain the whole East Coast and Eastern time frame, and then obviously Las Vegas is on the West Coast. So we should get more confirmation on that within the next week, because these guys are going to get ready to head into phase 3 before training camp in just 2.5 weeks, So I'm excited because I love hockey and I have been waiting for it to come back, but I've also been a nervous wreck because there's so much contact there just as football. But what's amazing is that when COVID-19 initially went rampant and, we all had to start self-quarantining, it was Bayer Hockey that started coming out with masks that were going to help protect people in the medical field, which was amazing and so interesting. So in other better news and a lighter note and more hockey talk, Flyers Oscar Lindblom hit the ice for the first time since recovering and going through his entire battle with cancer. If you guys have heard any of his story, he got diagnosed with cancer earlier in the fall, and that hit him hardcore. You saw players from every single team warming up on the ice wearing Oscar Strong t-shirts, just showing their support for him and his bounce back, and he's able to just come back to the NHL and have a career. And what an amazing statement to make, to not only come back and beat cancer, but to come back during a pandemic. The fact that he can even be amongst his teammates, do these workouts and get back into that atmosphere shows you just how strong he really is. So that's such an amazing story. Congratulations to Oscar and, all of his teammates, because they were so involved in making sure that he made a comeback to the Flyers. So congratulations to him. Stay with us as we have one more commercial break, and then we have some better news in terms of the MLB.
One of the things I love about Bass Pro is they have 3 great ways to shop. You can head into one of their awesome stores, visit BassPro.com, or get great gear from that catalog Johnny Morris sends out. Hi, here's your package. Bass Pro Shops, where commitment, passion, and the great outdoors all come together. Why would you shop anywhere else?
All right, guys, welcome back. So This time, I don't have to say MLB and roll my eyes and just drag on and on. We finally have momentum. We finally have an answer. The MLB is moving forward with the 2020 season and 60 games, whether players want to be involved or not. Well, now that they created an ultimatum, just made a move, brought a solution to the table, more players actually took to social media to say that they were fired up to just start playing again. That was interesting because I'm like, where was this enthusiasm like 17 counter offers ago? But I mean, I'm not going to complain. MLB is finally happening. It's back in action, and there are players that are actually excited to be on board. Crazy enough, they already have favorites for the World Series. Dodgers and Yankees are looking to be one of two teams that take it this year, so we can at least start having that conversation. Who are you more in favor of, the Dodgers or the Yankees? Please don't say the Yankees, even though I asked for your own opinion. For more COVID information and updates, because we are still in the middle of a pandemic, 12 more Philly players on top of the 4 announced last week have tested positive for COVID-19. Now, we know last week when those 4 players, non-names, got released, they shut down the spring training facilities not only in Florida, but in Arizona. Now that 12 more players came out testing positive, I don't know how they're going to go about this. Obviously, self-isolating, so on and so forth, facilities will probably continue to stay shut. But now that MLB is moving forward, they're going to have to pick it up in terms of locking down, sanitizing, making sure that they have full protocols in play because they're behind the 8 ball in terms of when they initially plan to get started. All in all, we'll give them their positive note that they finally earned after so much negotiation. The one other thing that the MLB does need to get on the ball with is that they need to submit their plan in order to play in Canada. So we know that obviously some games are supposed to take place in Canada, but if they don't get that plan over to them, get it confirmed and approved, then they're going to have to figure out where those games are going to take place, which will just cause another kink in already kinky plans. Now, we talked on Monday about NASCAR. That was a tough conversation to have for the information that came out. The hard part here is now the FBI investigation closes out, leaving some people feeling embarrassed, some people feeling confused, and other people taking to social media to express how elated they are with the conclusion that the FBI claimed to. The conclusion being that the rope hanging in the garage has actually been there all this time. It wasn't placed there as a prank. It was not placed there as a hate crime. So this is not ruled in as a hate crime, which raises the question, did not only NASCAR, but the FBI take this to the public way too early? I know we're in the middle of very sensitive times, but was it too quick to come out the gate and be like, this was a racial hate crime? The one other question that this does raise, though, is that the coincidence in the timing of everything, that a rope in the shape of a noose just happens to be in the garage of the one and only black race car driver in NASCAR. So there's just so many unanswered questions in a simple, tied up FBI investigation. But Bubba Wallace did speak out. He took to First Take earlier today and spoke to Stephen A. Smith, just kind of saying, I don't know how to feel about this. He does kind of still feel a little sketched out to the fact that it happened to be in his garage of all things, but he said that the fear of everything has been removed, and at least he can now get back to focusing on NASCAR, and the positive note being the support and the love that he got when everyone thought that what had happened was to a particular magnitude. Now, we don't want a cry wolf situation. We don't want the negative narratives to start speaking out louder, but obviously it's going to be there because people think it was a cry for help, and the people that took to social media to be elated over the situation. In other words, to say that he just made this whole situation and blew it out of proportion. Look, obviously other things are taking place to where he decided to go from 0 to 100 on a situation. And he also said, I was going based off of what sources told me was going on in the garage. So he didn't create this narrative, and he wanted to be sure to make that clear. He was going based off of what came to him when people said, hey, by the way, this is what's in your garage and this is what it looks like. Of course he'd be freaked out. So long story short, it's not a hate crime. Bubba plans to move forward. He plans to take the positive from everything that took place on Sunday and Monday and keep making progress in the sport of NASCAR. Now, of course, for one of my favorite topics, soccer. Arsenal's David Luiz agrees to a 1-year extension, which is big news for Arsenal if they could just get it together on the pitch, because he is a tremendous center back. At 33 years old, he is just now going into his second year with Arsenal after playing for Chelsea, which he was also a dominant center back for. So congratulations to Arsenal for being able to maintain him. We know that there was a lot of controversy taking place to not only how much pay he was looking for in order to either stay, but some of the teams that were betting him transfer market. So that was a big win for Arsenal. I hope things continue to work out. They took to a statement to say, look, David is a really important player for us. He played most of our matches this season. He's been very important to the team. His passing, his communication with the team on and off the pitch helps everyone improve. In other words, he is one of the biggest leaders on and off the field, and they want to make sure that they can keep him around and keep him happy as long as possible. Like I said, guys, it was a quick update for us on this Wednesday night. This week is flying by, and I cannot wait to chat it up with you guys on Friday. At least today felt more positive, felt more light, and per usual, stay safe, stay sane. It doesn't take a lot to wear a mask, to wash your hands, to carry hand sanitizer on you. We all have to do our part so we can continue moving forward, because I will be devastated if we have no NFL 2020 season. Stay safe, stay sane, stay kind, stay compassionate, and I'll catch you guys Friday at 8 p.m.